Hello lovely humans. I'm Sydney from the channel Pages of Syd, and this is sort of a booktube resurgence for me. I've previously had a channel, for those of you who may not know, but I deleted it, but I am back and I am using my very first video in my new booktube journey to address an issue that I've noticed happening for a while here, and this is particularly in regards to romance booktube and romance bookstagram, the romance book community at large. Um, this is not meant to call out anyone specifically. This is just an observation that I've had of a more like systemic issue that I've noticed and I've heard other people talk about as well, and I just wanted to offer my 2 cents on it. So, this is going to address, obviously from the title of this video, racism and anti-blackness. Now, those two things are very loaded words, and I realize that when people hear racism or anti-blackness, they think of, I don't know, I'm just giving a very extreme example, like the KKK, for example, like, overtly racist. But racism and anti-blackness can exist very subtly and on a systemic level that may not necessarily be seen um, without a closer look or without seeing patterns. And so I have noticed patterns in the romance book community. And this is specifically in regards to Black romance books, which are books that have two or more main characters involved in the relationship that are Black. So all participants of the relationship have to be Black. So if one person is Black and one person is not Black, then that is an interracial romance or a multicultural romance. It is not a Black romance. And I've noticed that in large part across the book community and romance that Black romances are ignored, or they are only a few select authors are talked about when it comes to Black romance. Um, and I think that's an issue. That's a huge issue. I think that a lot of the Black romance being produced nowadays is coming from the indie sphere, and I know that indie books are really popular in romance. I mean, I myself have read indie books, um, and there's definitely a lot more cutting edge stuff happening over in the indie world than traditional publishing, for a variety of reasons. And a lot of Black romance content is being produced, and a lot of those authors are putting in the work and have been for years, and they continually get ignored by a lot of the mainstream romance reviewers, and it just really saddens me. And I think that this is a problem for a variety of reasons. One, because people aren't getting the exposure of reading books that about people who aren't like them. I think we can all benefit from reading about experiences other than our own. And also, these authors don't get an opportunity to showcase the work that they've worked very hard on in front of a large audience. And I know a lot of these indie authors, I'm talking about indie specifically, because in traditional publishing, you just don't see a lot of Black romance. I mean, you do see it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that you never do. Of course you do. I mean, Beverly Jenkins exists, Brenna Jackson exists, other authors exist in the traditional publishing realm, but you just don't see it as often or at as high of a rate, I feel, as you do in indie. There's a certain authenticity to indie publishing that may not get through to traditional publishing. That's not to say traditional published romances aren't great or aren't high quality, but the publishing industry does have, their goal is to make it more palatable to a certain audience, to a wide audience, basically. So in terms of Black romance books, especially indie Black romance books, there really aren't a lot of reviewers who are reading them. Now, I will say that I think that Instagram is better than BookTube. Within this regard, there are some wonderful, wonderful bookstagrammers who are heavy advocates, huge advocates for Black romance. And I am starting to see a little bit on Romance BookTube, but I feel like that it's the same few authors mentioned over and over again. Now, it's great that those authors are getting exposure, don't get me wrong. Like, those authors definitely deserve it. But I feel that there are other authors out there who are not getting the attention that they deserve. And I think there's the sentiment out there that somebody can't relate to a Black romance book has two Black people as protagonists. And I've seen these takes before, and they're just incredibly, incredibly disheartening. And when I continually see people who read hundreds of books per year and very few of them are Black romance books, it makes me wonder, is that one of the reasons why we're not seeing more people pick Black romances up? Because they're, oh, I can't relate to those characters. Well, do you have to relate to every character you read about? I mean, how are people relating to aliens and monsters in certain romance books? But then the lines just absolutely stops at two Black people falling in love. Like, someone explain that to me. Um, and I also think too, it's an issue of finding Black romance books, even though they're it's an issue, but then it's not at the same time, or it's an issue, but it's not necessarily. It's not that Black romance books don't exist, even though people probably claim that, oh, I can't find any. Well, they're out there, you just haven't looked. And like, I'm somebody who once upon a time didn't know that Black romance books existed. So, or I didn't know that there were this variety of Black romance authors that existed that were writing romance with two Black people in it, because I was watching people who didn't talk about those books, and so I didn't see those books being exposed. It wasn't until over the summer after George Floyd's murder and I started confronting a lot of maybe my own biases that I had, or confronting my own limitations in terms of what I was looking for, that I realized, I'm like, you know what, there are a lot of these Black authors that are writing Black romances that are out there. All I had to do was search on Amazon and see all of these Black authors that are producing really great work. And I've read some really, really, really fun and great Black romances as of late. But I don't know if a lot of booktube and bookstagram are reading these books, and it just I'm starting to feel like it's just not wanting to at this point. I mean, that's another topic for, not wanting to read diversely, or oh, it's a chore, or people don't want to. And like, you have to be intentional with reading diversely. Like, you can't just sit there and, oh, I'll just read diversely. No, you have to be intentional with it, because if it's not happening, then, or if someone's not keeping track of what they read, or they aren't strategically planning out, okay, I need to read, books by different kinds of authors, then the default's always going to be whiteness every time. And so I think that I see that people are starting to read more Black romances, but I think it's partly because the big reviewers are starting to read these romances, and so it kind of starts to trickle down into the community at large. And that's great, but like, I wish that people would search things out on their own. Like, I see a lot of these Kindle Unlimited hauls from people, and a lot of times people will say, oh, well, I found this just on a whim, or just, searching through Kindle Unlimited, and I found it, and 9 times out of 10 it's probably going to be a white romance. And Black romances don't have the luxury of being stumbled upon unless people are actively searching for Black romance, because that's how the algorithms work. Unfortunately, algorithms are racist, because people make algorithms and people are biased. That's just what it is. So people aren't going to stumble upon Black romances. You have to intentionally look. But people aren't intentionally looking. It's either because they're lazy, or it's because they don't know what's out there. And so down below, I am going to link a couple of websites that will be very useful in people who are searching for Black romance. One of them is called Girl Have You Read, which is a wonderful website run by Christina C. Jones and Alexandra Warren, who are two wonderful Black romance authors. And they have just a whole directory of Black romance authors. They do new releases in Black romance, and so I'd highly recommend y'all check them out. Also, the Sister Girls Book Club, I will link that down below as well, and they have wonderful recommendations when it comes to Black romance. So I'll link those two, because it's just important. Like, we need to start seeking out these romances. Hello, Editing Sydney here. I totally forgot to mention a YouTube channel that is dedicated to talking about Black love romance in books. and that is called Now That's Black Love. It is run by Ashley over at the Bookish Realm and Deidre from Shade Tree Reads. I will make sure to link that down below as well, along with the other two websites. Okay, now back to the video. I also think maybe one of the reasons why people are so hesitant to pick up Black romance is because there are certain sentiments, certain notions that people have about Black romance that turn them away from picking those romances up. That Black romance is always urban romance, and whenever the term urban or street lit is thrown around, which is a very, very valid subgenre of books, not necessarily romance, but it can be romance. But Black romance isn't necessarily street lit or urban lit, and for some reason, people are repulsed by street and urban, or they assume that Black romance is always street lit or urban lit, and they don't realize that a lot of Black romances have follow professionals. You have doctors, you have lawyers, you have nurses, you have social media influencers. I mean, just any profession you can think of for characters in Black romance books. It's not just whatever someone thinks that street lit is. Like, that's not necessarily what Black romance is, and that type of thinking is really problematic, and it's rooted in anti-Blackness, because the association of urban and Black romance has been or urban and anything Black is been around for a while and has contributed to Black art or anything being not being prioritized. Also, the belief that people can't relate to Black romance is definitely out there, and it needs to stop. Like, that type of thinking needs to stop, because if people can read alien romances, if people can read romances about monsters, there is no excuse to not read Black romances. It's just simple as that. So yeah, obviously there's a lot of issues within the romance community. Honestly, the romance community is not new to racism. I mean, the whole RWA scandal that happened a little over a year ago is a testament to that. Um, but I think that it can change, but I just think it takes people being intentional with what they read. I keep on going back to that monsters and aliens and Black people. Come on, people. Like, that's something that I do not understand. Maybe because I haven't read an alien romance, and that's not something that interests me in the slightest. But man, picking up monsters and aliens and not Black people is really something. It just requires willingness to pick up books that you may not otherwise look for. So it requires some effort. And I've heard sentiments of, well, people don't want it to be a chore. And I'm like, well, I mean, if it's a chore, that kind of implies that you don't want to do it. And that's not good. I mean, I feel like we all would want to read diversely. And I guess the word diverse is kind of a throwaway term almost, because I'm specifically talking about Black romance. But this can apply to other multicultural romances too, romances with Latinx main characters, with Asian main characters, but I'm specifically talking about Black characters, because I'm a Black woman. Um, but it just needs to change. It just needs to change. There have been a couple of Black indie romance authors recently who have come forward and have said that they had tried in the past to get their books out for review, and they've been rejected by a lot of the mainstream reviewers because they didn't want to, or they couldn't relate, or whatever reason they gave, and that's very disheartening. And they did say that they're very thankful for those who do champion Black romance, and there are a lot of people out there who do, but I just feel like more people should, and I think more people are trying, but I feel like there could always try harder. And for those people who don't try, then that's on them, but don't say stuff that's harmful, because there have been some very, very recent takes where people have actively said harmful stuff to make people not pick up, that contribute to people not picking up Black romance. because of what I mentioned earlier in the video of, what people think Black romance is and what people associate Black people to be. And I want Black romance to get its visibility that it deserves, because these authors so deserve it. And that's honestly a lot of the reason why I decided to start my channel again, because I want to be able to review Black romance books. It's going to be other things too, like I just don't read romance. But some of it is going to be Black romance, because I want to champion these authors and I want to champion these stories. And what I've read so far has been really, really great. So I want to continue to uplift these authors. And I really hope that people start thinking about what they read and start being more intentional with picking up Black romance and reading more diversely in general. So that's it for my first video. I know it's kind of an unconventional first video. I didn't do like the new booktuber tag, or booktuber newbie tag, or whatever that's called. I don't think I'm gonna do that. I just kind of wanted to come out with a bang because this has just been something that's on my mind. And I said I did make a similar video over on IG, but I just wanted to kind of expand on that a little bit here. Well, until next time, I will see you guys in another video. Bye.